Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing a second attempt at teaching you how to play Lightsworn. Now, this is obviously going to be based off of the most recent Lightsworn list that I had. I'll have a link to it somewhere, probably, hopefully. But the ultimate goal of this video is basically just to give you a inside look as to what a realistic approach is when you're playing with the Lightsworn deck, as there are a lot of different combo lines that one can go through, so it can get a little bit overwhelming, as graveyard decks tend to be. But even so, hopefully by the end of this video, you've been able to learn at least a little bit and can apply what you've learned to how you play Lightsworn in the modern format. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into it. Now, as is always the case with this deck, we're going to give it a nice clean shuffle to ensure that it's as authentic as possible with the hands that are presented to us. Much like, because I just really don't enjoy doing the 5-card God hand, as I always state in every single video. I'd rather give you the most authentic POV you're a Lightsworn duelist as possible, just so that you can actually take away valuable information. Because me setting up my God hand, like, sure, it shows you what the highest potential is, but it doesn't give you like an accurate representation of what you're going to do, especially with a deck like this, right, where it's definitely on the lower end of the tier spectrum. So you're gonna have like a lot of hands where you're just opening up really awkward stuff, especially because this is a Lightsworn deck. So we play cards like Wolf and Felice, which you will be drawing, and you're not always gonna have the whites to put them on top. So with that in mind, let's just get our starting 5 and see what we can do. And then off the top, right, Wolf every time. It's just an unfortunate fact of life. You will be opening them whether you want to or not, but at least in this situation, we do have the Charge, we have the Foolish, and we have the Bestial Lubellion. We have 2 of the cards that we basically just never won in our hand, but we got to make do with what we have. So I guess first off, the best play would be to just straight up go for Charge of the Light Brigade, just to search out our Weiss, or maybe even a potential Dragonling, depending on what we mill. But it'll probably be Weiss, just so that we can take this and put it on top of our deck, right? So we're going to mill 3, being the Druisworm, the Charge of the Light Brigade, and the King Sarcophagus. Not the best, but at least we can start playing. So that's perfectly fine. From here, because we didn't mount any Lightsworn monsters, Weiss is basically going to be the only target that we have. So we're going to add the Weiss to hand, shuffle up our deck, place it back, then add this to hand and send that to the graveyard. From here, we have a couple of choices. I'm probably gonna start with the Lubellion first. The reason why I didn't start with the Lubellion as like our go-to starter is just because if you start with Lubellion with a hand like this, that means you're gonna automatically lose to Droll Lockbird, which is something that we want to prolong as long as possible, right? At least with the Charge of the Light Brigade start first, even though it is a little bit more risky because you can possibly mill like the Branded Regain, for example, that you want to set off of this. It gives us the best chances of actually being able to play the game. So that's why I opted to go for the Charge of the Light Brigade before I opted to go for the Lubellion. But even so, we can now activate the Lubellion. Lubellion's effect will activate, and we're of course going to be adding Bestial Magnemite to our hand, as we're going to be summoning it, and then basically during the end phase we get to search out any dragon, whether it's another Bestial or just some kind of combo card, whatever. But it's pretty important. And then from here, I think we're just going to go Magnemite, banish the Druisworm to special summon itself. We only played the one Druisworm, but there's still plenty of other methods that we can use to bring it back, so it's perfectly fine. We're basically just doing this so that we can guarantee get the Branded Regain set up, because that allows us to open up some of the grind game that this deck normally wouldn't have. So we special summon the Magnemite. Magnemite's effect will activate, so during the end phase we search a dragon, and then we tribute the Magnemite to bring back the Lubellion. And then we're going to activate the Lubellion, and this is also like another fantastic card that just baits out hand traps, such as like Impermanent Effect Veiler, right? Because your opponent does not want this card to hit the field, just because it does make it a lot more difficult for them to actually deal with your end board, as it does become a lot more resilient. You can bring back cards like Magnemite, you can recycle cards to draw cards. Dissipator becomes an even bigger threat, because if they get rid of it, then they summon, you can bring back the Dissipator, and then like things really just do get out of hand the moment this card hits the field, and it's just such a pain to deal with. All right, so we've set up our Regained, our Magnemite's effect will activate in the end phase, or resolve in the end phase, and we have a Bestial Lubellion here. So now we can start doing our Lightsworn combos. We're going to activate our Weiss. We're going to send Wolf. Well, we don't send the Wolf, we stack it on top. So it goes to the top of the deck, then we mill 2, we look at that Wolf, and then charge the Light Brigade. Wolf's effect will activate because it's mandatory to come back, and then we can start with our synchro plays. So we're going to synchro for 8, and the first level 8 synchro monster is basically always going to be Minerva, the Athenian Lightsworn. Now, there are certain situations where you're not going to summon this just from the get-go, but they're very few and far in between, and it typically is because, like, you already used it, for example, or like you want to make it later in the game when you have a guaranteed way to be able to stop your opponent. But for now, because our hand is still pretty weak, we're just gonna go straight for the Minerva, and we're gonna send the Felice as 1, and then the Weiss as the second card. So Felice will activate to special summon itself, and then Weiss will activate to bring back a Lightsworn monster, which is gonna be the Wolf. So we bring these 2 back, and then from here we have a couple of choices, right? So we can go straight for like another level 8 synchro monster. We can go for our rank 4 play, whether it's like the OG Exceed Minerva, not the level 3, the OG Exceed, even though I'm pretty sure the level 3 came out first. I don't really remember. It's been a long time. But we can go for that. We can go for Dungaris to draw and then discard. But I think the safest play is probably just to go for Psyframe Lord Omega, and then we just have it threatening our opponent's hand. So the cool thing about Omega is that it's basically always going to be threatening your opponent almost immediately, as the moment you activate this card's effect, it's almost always going to suss out whether they have a Nibiru in hand or not, as they typically are going to just chain Nibiru to get rid of this card, as they don't want to give up any potential knowledge of what they're playing, right? So it's just like a very powerful threat that will give us a little bit more protection, and then does also work out pretty well with Branded Regained. If you don't have like Regained out, then you basically just, I don't want to say you auto lose to Malice because you don't want to hit those cards, right? You can go like Omega and then banish a White Rabbit, and then the White Rabbit will trigger, and then without the Regain, you just gave them like a free +2 because they have a monster on the board, and then they are able to set like a trap. So not a +2, but a +1, because their overall card advantage changed from 5 to 6. But with Branded Regained, we can now go Omega, banish a Malice monster, and then if they try to activate it, we'll Branded Regained it back to the bottom of the deck and then draw a card for free. So this card is just, it's so powerful and it has so many applications. But before we get to the Omega, we're going to activate Minerva first, just so that we have a little bit more built-in protection. Unfortunately, we currently only have 3 different names, so that means cards like Punishment Dragon. We're going to have to work a little bit harder to take advantage of it, but we'll get to that eventually. So we're going to banish our 4 for cost to mill 4 more cards, and then here we are finally going to activate our Omega's effect. So like I said, if you activate the Omega and they have a nib, they're pretty much always going to drop it here, but at least in this way, you're still going to get the Minerva effect to mill 4, so hopefully we get something good. But let's just say that they didn't do it for, like, just for the showcase, right? So we banished the Omega, no Nibiru, perfect. Now we know we can combo off. And it's not always going to work, right? Sometimes you will take the gamble and just keep the nib for later in the combo and risk losing it to Omega, but it's a calculated risk that they are willing to take. So Omega will banish itself, and then we mill 4, being the Zephyros, fantastic. Imseti, Glory of Horus, all right. Trick Clown, fantastic. And Bestial Baldrake, So we could go like Branded Regain and then shuffle back one of our Lightsworn monsters just to draw a card, but I don't think we need to do that just yet. We're going to be focusing more on these ones first. So we're going to be activating Trick Clown's effect. It's going to special summon itself, and then we're going to have Zephyros in the graveyard. And from here, we can do a couple of things. So obviously, we can go Zephyros' effect to bounce pretty much any one of these cards, just to like have like another board presence. But I don't think we're going to do that just yet, because we're going to try and get this guy out onto the field. And it's going to take a little bit of elbow grease, but I believe we can do it. Now, obviously, because we have the Foolish Burial, we can just go straight for the Dungaris play if we really want to, but that's boring. I want to risk it on the Zombie Vampire. So we're going to do that first. And I always just enjoy putting them up there. So from here, we can go for the Zombie Vampire. Zombie Vampire's effect, it literally does not matter what you detach. So we're going to do that one, and then we're going to mill 4, Talent, Mudora, King Sark, and Imseti. Well, we milled both our King Sark, but because we hit the Mudora, we are still capable of like shuffling them back if we really want to. So many choices. I guess we can just do this, right? So we're gonna bring out the Imseti that we milled, and then we're gonna bounce this one back with our Zephyros. And then at some point, whenever we get like desperate enough, we're gonna have the Mudora available to us to basically just shuffle back our King Sarks. But we don't need to do that just yet. For now, this is perfectly fine as is. It's just later on in the game, though, it will come up. So from here, we have a couple of choices. We can go for the rank 4 Minerva. We can go for the Dugaris. We can activate Foolish Burial to send Wolf just to start setting up the Saryuja line, which will in turn give us the Hieratic Seals, which is something that we always want to end on. This is probably like the hardest point of the deck, right? Just because, like I said, there are so many different lines that you can take, and there's no one true correct answer, because one could just completely get blown out by your opponent holding something, while another, in like another situation, you'll get punished for taking the more conservative play. But I think we're gonna go for Foolish, and we're gonna finally start setting up the Saryuja stuff. So, I don't even know if that's worth it, actually. Like I said, this deck is very hard to play because there's so many different lines. So instead, we're actually just going to go for the OG Minerva. And by OG, I mean the Exceed. Sorry, remember, I don't know if this is the OG or if the level 3 is the OG, but one of them is. So we're going to do this, and we're going to detach Zephyros just because it is a dark monster. And then there is the potential that we just end up leaving this card here. And as a result, that means we're going to get a little bit more value at a Trick Cloud potentially at some point. But it's not guaranteed. So we're going to detach Zephyros, mill 3, Lightsworn Aegis, Bishop Lubellion, and Reedon. So we get to draw 2 cards because we milled 2 Lightsworn cards. So we get the Chaos Dragon Levianeer and the Weiss Lightsworn Archfiend. Weiss, whatever. But the Chaos Dragon Levianeer is really good. Then our Lightsworn Aegis is going to activate to set itself back into our side of the field because it was milled. And just like that, we have a little bit more incentive to want to keep the Minerva here, even though we don't have to. Now, as for what we want to do next. So, Punishment Dragon still doesn't really matter all that much, if we're being honest. I think the best course of action is probably special summoning the Chaos Dragon Levianeer and then banishing 3 Darks, just to be able to loop another card out of our opponent's hand, because we've already done one with the Omega, right? So we can get rid of the Imseti because we don't need that, as we already have the one in hand. We can get rid of the Zephyros because we've already used its effect. And then for the last one, between Bestial Magnamut and Baldrake, it's going to be Magnamut just because there's the potential that we can still add back from the graveyard with Magnamut's effect during the end phase. So we don't really want to, like, get rid of those cards just yet. So we're going to do this special, banishing 3 Darks, and then Levianeer's effect will activate to banish to shuffle a card back from our opponent's hand back into their deck. So just like that, they're down to 3 cards, and we still have plenty of gas to go through. So things are definitely about to get a little bit out of hand for our opponent, unfortunately for them. So now, I guess now would probably be like the perfect time to finally do this, because now that we've hit all this, Saryuja is sounding pretty good, but I still don't want to do that. Instead, no, it's actually fine, because this will allow us to send Wolf, and then Wolf will summon itself out, and then this is going to be one of the cards that we're going to shuffle back with our Mudora that we milled earlier in the game, because, Wolf is Wolf. And we're looking pretty low on cards, so we want to be a little bit careful with what we do. So we're going to go here. That's our graveyard. Our deck's thinner than our graveyard now. Then we're going to go link 4 into Saryuja, who will now allow us to draw 4, and then we put 3 at the bottom of our deck. So we had Seifert, Dragonling, and Lubellion. So we don't need Lubellion, we don't need multiple copies of Dragonling. And then for the rest, truth be told, we don't really need Weiss anymore either, just because what we're going to be special summoning off the Saryuja is more than likely going to be our Starliege Seifert, just so that we have like another dragon, then we can link it off and then take advantage of its graveyard effect. And then with like the Dragonling, because we play 2 Felice, we're still going to have access to like another tuner if we so choose to have one. So Weiss, pretty meh. Now you may be wondering, why don't I send the Happy or the Imseti? Well, because we have the Shuffler, I actually want to keep these both in hand, just so that I don't have to risk like trying to mill them again at some point. Once the Shuffler puts back King Sark, we're going to activate, ditch these two, and then these are going to be brought back as like 2 free summons, essentially, without having to discard any more cards for cost or whatever. So, in my opinion, these are probably the best choices. So off they go to the bottom of the deck, and then let's just make sure that we didn't mill like a Punishment Dragon or anything like that, because we probably will need it again at some point. And it's looking like we're okay. So from here, we're going to go Star User's effect, Special Summon Starlight Seifert. We don't care about its effect to send to add a dragon. We're just going to link these two off now into our Heavenly Spheres, as that's a pretty good card. It bounces face-up cards in the field. We could go for like another rank 8 or whatever in the form of like Scarlight, but I don't feel like it's honestly worth it. Like I'm trying to see if we can find like a way to get out Dissipator, but it's not looking very likely since we basically got rid of all our level 6s. But it's all good. It's not the end of the world, you know. We have plenty of other choices, such as like IP Masquerena that we can go into, which is still just as good. And this is like with a pretty, I don't want to say awful hand, but it's definitely more on the mediocre side. From here, I guess we're going to try and stack the odds in our favor, right? So we're going to activate the Mudora now, and the Mudora is going to put back the Wolf. It's going to put back 1 King Sarcophagus, and it's going to put back the Bestial Baldrake, just so that we have an attempt to draw it. It's not going to be very likely, but never say never, right? If we can draw it, we're basically just set for life. If we can't, it's no big deal. Although there were like other avenues of play that we could have gone through that just aren't really worth it, I guess. Then we're going to special summon our Lightsworn Dragonling. Dragonling's effect is going to activate Descend, and we're going to send our Felice to grave, and Felice is going to come back. And then now we have our Synchro, or a potential Synchro 8, an Exceed play, basically you name it, right? But we still don't care about that. Now we're going to finally activate the Imseti. We're going to discard the Happy. We're going to search for the 1 King Sark, and then maybe at some point we can finally get the Baldrake. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe. Probably not, though. And then, like, another thing that you could have done, I guess, if you really wanted to... never mind. It doesn't matter. We've already gone this far, so there's no point in, like, suggesting that. So we draw a Punishment Dragon. Meh, whatever. We didn't really want that. We would have preferred to search that off the Dragonling, but it does make our decisions a little bit more easier. From here, we can just activate the King Sark, and then we're going to bring back our Happy and our Imseti. We still have our Starleaf Safer, so that means we're going to be able to draw another card deeper, as what we're going to do is we're going to add back the Levianeer. Our Starleaf Safer is going to be shuffled back by our Branded Regained, and then we get to draw a card, and can we get it? Can we get it? Nope. Oh, well, we tried. You can't say we didn't try. So we could either go for now the IP Masquerena, which I think is probably the best play, or we can go for the Dugaris, like bring something back, but I don't think there's anything worth bringing back for the most part. Like maybe, I guess we could go like Raiden to like mill 2 more cards, but it's just not worth the effort, honestly. But what we can do, right, is even though we cannot use our Chaos Dragon Levianeer's effect anymore, we still actually can special summon it out, and then that will in turn allow us to get our 4th Lightsworn monster in the graveyard, and then that allows us to bring out our Punishment Dragon, which we can then shuffle back like resources or whatever to make like another play if we really want to, but we don't really want to. But we can. So I guess we can just be greedy, right, with these cards that we have in our hand. So we're going to special summon the Levianeer. It doesn't do anything because we've already used its effects, but there's no limit to special summoning. We're going to banish the Raiden for sure because we need that at least. And then probably just these two. or it doesn't really matter because we're going to shuffle them all back with our punishment dragon anyways. So we're going to do those. Then from here, we can just go link like 2 of these off into, not these ones though, because they do have like valuable effects that we want to take advantage of at some point, right? So I guess we're gonna overlay first. Oh, see, I'm getting so overwhelmed that I don't even know what the correct choice to go for is just yet. And that's why I said like this deck is super hard, because there's just so many different lines and there's no correct choice. That it's almost impossible to not get overwhelmed because of all the choices that you have. And like, you don't even have to be greedy, right? We can just leave these here, and then that way we can ensure that we get like 2 Lightsworn Aegis Negates if we want to. But I think 1 is going to be perfectly fine if we're being honest. So we can just like link these 2 off into the IP Masquerena, and then we're going to special summon the Punishment Dragon here. And then this will give us protection against like Malice as well, right? Because we just chain the Punishment Dragon during their turn and shuffle everything back. And even against like the more rogue strategies, such as like Founderies or Ritual Beast, this card just completely demolishes. So we could just like end it here, but we don't want to do that just yet. We're going to go Punishment Dragon effect because our deck is looking a little thin, and then we're going to shuffle back everything that's not a Lightsworn back into our deck. So Magnamut, Zephyros, Samseti, Omega, the card that we banished with Omega, Druid Swarm, they all go back. Saryuja, Levianeer, literally everything that isn't a Lightsworn monster gets shuffled back. So we're basically just good to go on our next turn with all the resources available to us again. So these ones go back into the deck, these ones go into the extra. And then like another thing that you could have done, I guess, if you really wanted to, is before we even made the IP Masquerena, right? Or not before, but you could have made IP using the Imseti and like the other guy, the Chaos Dragon Levianeer, and then because we shuffled back the Omega, we can go for like another hand rip and then just put our opponent down to 2 cards, and they're just not beating that, right? But those are misplays on my end, so we're just not going to care about that too much. This is set on our field. Then from here, we shuffle these, shuffle those. Our deck is now full once again with all these good cards. And even with like 3 cards, our opponent is going to be pretty hard pressed to just be able to break this board, even with the scuff gameplay that I showcased. Because we have a negate with the Aegis, we're going to have a shuffle back for all the banished cards. IP Masquerena is going to SP Little Knight. Hieratic Seal is going to bounce something and summon a dragon. These 2 add back resources and then pop cards, and it's just too much for your opponent to deal with if you're actually able to pop off, even with slight misplays, as long as you still make like a pretty decent end board. And with that, that is finally the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, see ya.